must do him this favor, though it might involve child labor. Join his entourage, give him a foot massage. From Star Search to the Philharmonic, he'll get you there with hooked on phonics. He's the one to know. Doesn't matter if you blow, no, 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 no. In fact, it's just a thing he thinks we're needing. It's a lukewarm liquid diet.
Well, I first got in the letterpress back in 1965 at Roosevelt Junior High School. It was mandatory that the boys take 4 shop classes. So my first shop class was printing, and I just fell in love with it. And I've been doing it ever since. I'm not good with the dates, but printing originally started back in China in forever ago. I don't know, like year 1000. But most people, as we know printing today, is Johannes Gutenberg, the Gutenberg Bible. He's the one that invented movable type and printed the Bible off of the handset type. The letterpress printing process is printing off of raised letters or plates. Basically, there's 2 types of letterpress printing. There's planten press printing and cylinder press printing. The planten press, you have your form, your type form, locked into a chase, and the presses hit together, smashing the image against the paper. On a cylinder press, the paper rolls on a cylinder, rolls around, and it just touches the individual letters at a time. The 50s and the 60s, when offset printing made the big boom into the market, it hurt letterpress immensely because of the speed that an offset press runs. We basically run our presses just 1,000 an hour. That's how we base all our pricing, just to do 1,000 an hour, where a slow speed for an offset press is 5,000 to 6,000 an hour. Your make ready to get a job ready is so much faster on offset. For years and years and years, your big book and magazine publishers that printed letterpress, the day shift would come in and make the whole job ready to get it so it all prints even and everything looks good. And it'd take them 8 hours to do that, and the second shift would run the job, and then they repeat the cycle. Where in offset, you can usually have a job all made ready, a 4-color job, in less than an hour. And that's what killed the big sheet letterpress printing. To the printing part of it, that'll always be here to some degree, and now with more and more printers that have letterpress equipment finding out that people want the quality and the feel of letterpress, they're turning to that for wedding invitations and note cards, personal stationery, things like that. So your shops that specialize in that will do quite well. There's not too many places you can buy parts for letterpress. We're one of the very few that still sell parts for these presses. And if we find a old letterpress that's in really bad shape, that we'll buy it just for the parts. You can go on the internet and find equipment, but the problem with the internet is the asking price usually starts out a lot higher than what the actual piece of equipment is worth. And a lot of the times you're buying this sight unseen. It's a 12 by 18 Branget and Kluge printing press, commonly known as a Kluge. It was built in 1956. Its general purpose at the time was just basically for printing. And then over the years, shop owners discovered they could do more on it by pulling the rollers off. You could do perforating, die cutting, scoring. We keep this press just for printing. The other Kluges we have, we keep them set up, one for printing, one for die cutting, one for foil stamping. And then our Chandler and Price are the Kluge feeders. We keep those set up for scoring and die cutting. and then printing memorial folders for the funeral homes. And then we have one heavy-duty press that all we do is die cutting on it. I have 5 Kluges, and I have 3 CMPs with Kluge feeders. And we've got 1 CMP hand feed, we've got the 2 verticals, and a Vandercook proof press. This press has all its original parts. We're lucky that nothing's been busted on it, to have major parts made or replaced. But then of course some of your smaller parts do wear out and they've been replaced over time, but that's just normal wear and tear. Oil is probably the most vital thing to these old machines. We oil our presses every day. And if we're doing a hard job, as to a heavy duty die cutting job, we'll oil at least twice a day. There's over 150 oil spots on a Kluge. And one of the first things I like to stress when I put a new Kluge in for somebody is all the oil spots, because you can't miss any of them. Because oil's a lot cheaper than replacement parts. The original intention of the Ludlow was to set the newspaper headlines and the headings to start articles. I'm setting brass letters that will go into the typesetting machine. Just like everything else with letterpress, they don't make this type fonts anymore, so you buy them used, or you try to buy used typesetting machines that include the type. These cases are laid out basically in alphabetical order, with the caps on one side and the lowercase and figures on the other side. The principle of the machine, it runs off of molten lead, which here's a pig. I'm going to add a little lead to it. The lead is melted at 550 degrees, so the machine has to be up to temperature before you can cast anything. I'm going to lift the lever, it's going to swing around, it's going to come up, it's going to cast the slug. Here's the slug. This is the first half of the slug. I release the lever and I do the same thing again. This gives me the other half of the slug. Cast in brush or wave, whatever you want to call it, and each individual letter of this brass is set in there, and the actual image is on the back side of it. So it's set in the stick like this. The hot metal is forced into there, and that creates the slug. Not like a computer. For every size of letters you need, you have to have a drawer. In our Parkway script, we have 12, 14, 18, and 24, and that's all we have. Where on the computer, you have from 6 up to 120, I believe. The nice thing about a Ludlow and a Linotype machine is I'm always dealing with brand new type. As with handset, it gets worn out, and you have to replace it by buying new foundry type, and that is getting very hard to find. There's not too many type foundries left anymore. I enjoy talking to the old-timers in this business, that just when you think you know almost everything in the whole wide world, you learn a little bit more. And I had the pleasure of discovering that with Playboy magazine, when it first started, before it went to press with the first issue, Hugh Hefner had to find a printer to do this. And back then that was an awful racy magazine. He wanted to keep it in the Chicago area, but he didn't want a Chicago printer to do it. He didn't think he was going to get a fair price and the quality that he wanted. He found a printer in Freeport, Illinois, working out of his basement, believe it or not, I'm sorry, his garage. Approached him, the gentleman thought about it, got back to Hugh Hefner and said, I don't know what my family or my neighbors would think of me producing that type of magazine, so I'm going to turn it down. He turned it down, and they went over to Rochelle Printing down in Rochelle, and that's where the first 4 issues of Playboy were produced, all letterpress. Yes, I love model trains and big trains and everything else, and that's my relaxation. Believe it or not, this work is very, very, very stressful because of the demands that the customers put on me for, they want quality, but they want it now. So my relaxation is going home and working on and playing with my trains. Well, you want to run it like a real railroad. You just don't drive your trains around the track and uncouple them here and do this. There are certain set orders. You have to have forms to do that.
Forms.
Railroad forms. Like waybill cards and
So
train
like
constants.
Like, you got these miniature little...
No, they're full-size forms.
That you fill out and...
You fill out, yes.
Wow.
So when you have operating sessions and you have 4 or 5 guys over to run your railroad, they all know what they're supposed to do. As to the printing part of it, that'll always be here to some degree, and now with more and more printers that have letterpress equipment finding out that people want the quality and the feel of letterpress, they're turning to that for wedding invitations and note cards, personal stationery, things like that. So your shops that specialize in that will do quite well. As to the shops like us that do it as commercial printing, mainly for the funeral homes and not the finishing aspect, is we will still see a decline until we change directions. We see that probably starting to happen next year, 2011. We're going to start changing direction on what we do. For the quality printers, yes. You go to these trade shows and you see all the fancy digital equipment, but you still have the group of printers that are standing around in awe as a 40-inch die cutter is die cutting full sheets of decks of cards, boxes, pocket folders, things of that nature, and you know, it just can't be done on an offset press.
Right.
And with the digital market, they don't make the presses big enough to even do that. So that is still letterpress printing, and it's still going to be around.